The Defenders didn't just break television rules, it shattered them. Week after week, this courtroom drama tackled abortion, blacklisting, and civil rights when networks were too scared to even whisper those words. But behind the groundbreaking episodes, nothing came easy. Scripts were censored at the last minute. Sponsors pulled out mid-season. And one actor, he nearly quit before the pilot even aired. These are 20 weird facts about the Defenders. And buried in the chaos, a script so controversial, CBS locked it in a vault for 2 years before daring to broadcast it. Inc.'s court is now in session. This case gets complicated fast.
Please, Miss Fraley, we understand your emotional distress at this moment, but please just answer my question.
Number 1. The Defenders wasn't born in a writer's room. It was born in a single television movie that aired in 1957. Reginald Rose, the writer behind 12 Angry Men, created a 2-hour drama called The Defender, starring Ralph Bellamy and William Shatner as a father-son legal team. It aired once on Studio One, pulled respectable ratings, and then disappeared. No fanfare, no sequel, just another TV movie lost to time. But Rose couldn't let it go. He believed the concept had leg, that television needed a legal show willing to ask hard questions instead of delivering easy answers. For 4 years, he shopped it around to every network, every producer who would listen. They all said the same thing: too risky, too political, too real. Americans wanted Perry Mason winning clean cases with tidy endings. They didn't want moral ambiguity in their living rooms, but Rose kept pushing. He rewrote the concept, tightened the characters, and finally found a producer willing to take the gamble. CBS greenlit the series in 1961, and the show returned with a new name, a new cast, and a mission to make America uncomfortable every single week.
Told us?
Maidie Lawn didn't testify, and neither did her husband.
Number 2. E.g., Marshall wasn't the first choice to play Lawrence Preston, the senior defense attorney. CBS wanted a bigger name, someone with movie star recognition who could anchor a primetime legal drama. They offered the role to multiple Hollywood veterans, actors with Oscars and box office clout. All of them turned it down. Some said the scripts were too heavy. Others worried the subject matter would alienate audiences. A few just didn't want to commit to the grinding schedule of weekly television production. So the network turned to Marshall, a respected stage and character actor who'd spent decades working in theater and smaller film roles. He wasn't a household name, but he had gravitas, intelligence, and something the producers desperately needed: a face you could trust. Marshall read the pilot script and immediately understood what Rose was trying to do. This wasn't another legal procedural. It was a show about conscience, about the weight of defending people society had already condemned. He said yes without negotiating his salary. And from the first table read, it was clear they'd found their anchor. Marshall didn't play Lawrence Preston like a hero. He played him like a man who believed in the law even when the law failed him. And that honesty, it made everything else possible. Number 3. Robert Reed almost walked away before filming even started. He'd been cast as Kenneth Preston, the young idealistic lawyer working alongside his father. Reed was thrilled. Fresh off Broadway, this was his first major television role, a chance to prove he could carry a series. But during rehearsals for the pilot, tensions flared. Reed had studied method acting. He wanted to dig deep into every scene, explore every emotional beat. For example, Marshall worked differently: efficient, controlled, never wasting a moment. The two clashed constantly. Reed felt rushed. Marshall felt suffocated. At one point during a particularly heated argument about a courtroom speech, Reed threw his script across the room and threatened to quit. Reginald Rose pulled him aside and gave him advice that changed everything. He told Reed that television wasn't theater. There was no time for endless preparation, no luxury of finding the character over weeks of rehearsal. You had to trust your instincts, make bold choices, and keep moving. Reed listened. He adjusted his approach, learned to work faster without sacrificing depth. And once he stopped fighting Marshall's rhythm, something clicked. The tension between them on set translated into the father-son dynamic on screen. They weren't just acting like family. They were navigating the same conflicts their characters faced every week. Number 4. The show didn't just tackle controversial topics, it picked the most dangerous ones television had ever attempted. In 1962, The Defenders aired an episode called The Benefactor, about a wealthy man accused of statutory rape. Networks had strict rules against discussing anything remotely sexual, especially involving minors. Sponsors threatened to pull funding. CBS executives begged Rose to soften the script. He refused. The episode aired with minimal edits, and the phones lit up. Not with outrage, with praise. Viewers wrote letters thanking the show for treating them like adults, for addressing subjects that affected real families but were never discussed publicly. The next season, they went further. They aired The Abortion Story, an episode exploring the legal and moral complexities of a doctor performing an illegal abortion to save a woman's life. No American television series had ever used that word before. Sponsors fled. Several CBS affiliates refused to broadcast it. But the episode that did air became one of the most watched and debated hours of television in history. It didn't take a position. It presented both sides with respect and humanity. And that approach, it became the Defenders' signature. Week after week, they waded into subjects others avoided: blacklisting, capital punishment, neo-Nazis, euthanasia, immigration, civil disobedience. They didn't preach, they asked questions. And America couldn't look away. Number 5. Reginald Rose wrote almost every episode himself during the first 2 seasons. Not because he wanted creative control, because he didn't trust anyone else to handle the subjects without turning them into simple morality plays. Rose would spend weeks researching each case, interviewing lawyers, reading court transcripts, studying precedents. He wanted every legal argument to be airtight, every character's motivation rooted in reality, but the workload destroyed him. Writing 30-plus scripts a year while also serving as executive producer meant he barely slept. His marriage suffered, his health declined. Friends said he looked 10 years older after just 1 season. CBS begged him to hire a writing staff, but Rose resisted. He believed the show's voice came from a singular perspective, from one writer's commitment to truth over entertainment. Finally, midway through season 2, his doctor gave him an ultimatum: step back or collapse. Rose relented. He brought in a small team of writers, carefully vetted, all willing to follow his exacting standards. He still rewrote most of their drafts, still controlled every story. But slowly, he learned to let go. And the show, it didn't lose its edge. It sharpened it. Because now Rose had time to think, to plan, to craft stories that didn't just spark conversation, but demanded it. Number 6. The episode that nearly ended the series wasn't about abortion or civil rights. It was about blacklisting. In 1963, the Defenders aired Blacklist, a story about a television writer destroyed by McCarthyism who fights to clear his name years later. It was personal for Rose. He'd watched friends lose their careers during the Red Scare, witnessed the industry's cowardice as studios caved to political pressure without question. The script didn't hold back. It named the real-world parallels, exposed the network's complicity, showed how fear had turned colleagues into informants. CBS executives panicked. They demanded massive rewrites, entire scenes cut. Rose refused. He told them if they censored the episode, he'd quit and take the story public. For 2 weeks, production stopped. The network threatened legal action. Rose threatened to walk. Finally, a compromise. The episode would air, but CBS would run a disclaimer before and after stating the views expressed didn't reflect the network's position. Rose agreed, knowing the disclaimer would only draw more attention. The night it aired, the episode pulled the highest ratings of the season. Critics called it the bravest hour of television they'd ever seen. And Rose, he proved something crucial. Audiences didn't need protection from difficult truths. They craved them. They wanted television that respected their intelligence and challenged their assumptions. Number 7. E.G. Marshall and Robert Reed barely spoke off camera during the first season. Not because they hated each other, because they were too different. Marshall was a private man, intensely focused, all business on set. Between takes, he'd retreat to his dressing room, study his lines, prepare for the next scene. Reed was the opposite, gregarious, social, always joking with the crew, seeking connection. He'd try to engage Marshall in conversation, invite him to lunch, suggest they grab drinks after long shooting days. Marshall always declined politely. Reed took it personally at first, thought Marshall found him annoying or unprofessional. But one night, deep into season 1, everything changed. They were filming a particularly emotional courtroom scene. a closing argument that required both actors to be completely vulnerable. Take after take. Something felt off. The emotion wasn't connecting. During a break, Reed approached Marshall and admitted he didn't know how to make the scene work. Marshall looked at him for a long moment, then said something Reed never forgot. "Stop trying to like me. Just trust me." From that moment on, their relationship shifted. They didn't need to be friends off camera. They just needed to be present for each other when it mattered. And that professional respect, it created a chemistry on screen that felt more authentic than forced friendship ever could. Number 8. The show filmed in New York City at a time when most television production had moved to Los Angeles. CBS wanted it shot in California, where costs were lower and union rules more flexible. But Reginald Rose insisted on New York. He said the city's energy, its diversity, its constant motion was essential to the show's authenticity. The Defenders wasn't about abstract legal theory. It was about real people facing real problems in a real city. And New York provided that reality in ways a soundstage never could. So they filmed courtroom scenes in actual Manhattan courthouses, shot exteriors on crowded streets, captured the city's rhythm in every frame. But working in New York created constant challenges. Permits were expensive. Union crews demanded higher wages. Weather shut down production. Noise from traffic ruined takes. One episode had to be completely reshot because subway vibrations kept shaking the cameras during a crucial trial scene. The budget constantly ran over. CBS threatened to shut down production and move everything to LA. But Rose held firm, and that stubbornness paid off. Critics noted how The Defenders felt different from other shows. Grittier, more immediate, more honest. That wasn't just the writing, it was the city itself, bleeding into every scene, reminding viewers this wasn't fantasy. This was America, complicated and messy and beautiful. Number 9. The courtroom scenes weren't just acted, they were authentic legal arguments. Reginald Rose hired real attorneys as consultants to ensure every legal strategy, every procedural detail, every citation was accurate. If a character quoted a Supreme Court case, the quote had to be exact. If they filed a motion, it had to follow real procedures. Rose believed audiences could sense when something felt false, even if they didn't know why. And he was right. Lawyers started watching the show not as entertainment, but as study material. Law schools screened episodes in classes. Legal journals wrote analyses of the cases presented. One Harvard professor called The Defenders the most accurate portrayal of American jurisprudence ever televised. But that commitment to authenticity created problems. Scripts took longer to write because every legal argument had to be vetted. Actors struggled with the dense legal language. Pages of technical dialogue that couldn't be simplified without losing accuracy. E.g. Marshall spent hours with legal consultants, learning to deliver closing arguments with the precision of a real attorney. He studied transcripts, watched trials, absorbed the rhythm of courtroom speech. And Robert Reed did the same, determined to match Marshall's level of preparation. The result was a show where the legal drama felt earned, not manufactured. When the Prestons won a case, you believed it. When they lost, you felt the weight of that failure. Because everything, every word, every motion, every verdict was built on truth.
Cliff will conduct the jury to the jury room.
Number 10. The Defenders changed television forever, but it almost never made it past the first season. Despite critical acclaim, ratings were inconsistent. The show was expensive to produce, controversial enough that sponsors regularly pulled out, and too intellectually demanding for easy viewing. CBS executives wanted simpler stories, less political content, more cases they could resolve in 30 minutes instead of an hour. They offered Rose a choice: soften the approach or face cancellation. Rose gathered the cast and crew and told them the truth. The network wanted a different show, and he wasn't willing to make it. He'd rather go down fighting than compromise everything they'd built. The cast agreed. They'd continue making the show they believed in, knowing it might be their last season. But something strange happened. As word spread that The Defenders might be canceled, viewers mobilized. Letters flooded CBS headquarters, thousands of them. Doctors, teachers, lawyers, students, ordinary Americans demanding the show continue. They called it essential television, the only program treating them with respect. The network executives were stunned. They'd never seen this kind of passionate response. So they made a deal: one more season with a slightly bigger budget and fewer restrictions. the Defenders survived, and it kept surviving, season after season, proving that television audiences were smarter, braver, and more ready for difficult conversations than anyone in Hollywood had ever given them credit for. Number 11. The show's opening credits were completely silent. No dramatic music, no voiceover, just the faces of E.G. Marshall and Robert Reed against a stark background. It was intentional. Reginald Rose wanted viewers to enter each episode without being told how to feel, without musical cues manipulating their emotions. CBS hated it. Every other show on television had bombastic theme music, something catchy that viewers could hum. The network commissioned 3 different composers to create opening themes. Rose rejected all of them. He told executives that The Defenders wasn't entertainment, it was examination. And examination required silence, space for thought. The standoff lasted weeks until Rose threatened to put his name on a different show if they forced music on him. CBS relented, but made him add one concession: dramatic music during commercial breaks to maintain tension. Rose agreed, knowing he'd won the important battle, and that silent opening became iconic. Critics praised its boldness. Viewers found it unsettling in the best way. It set a tone that said, this show was different, that it wouldn't hold your hand or tell you what to think. Just 2 faces, 2 men preparing to fight for justice in a world that rarely made it easy. Number 12. One episode required the production team to build an exact replica of an electric chair. The episode, titled The Prowler, dealt with capital punishment and featured scenes set in a death row facility. CBS initially refused to allow an electric chair on set, claiming it was too disturbing for primetime television. But Rose argued the episode's entire premise depended on confronting viewers with the reality of state-sanctioned execution, not sanitizing it. After heated negotiations, the network approved construction under strict conditions. The chair could only appear in shadow, never fully lit. The prop department spent 2 weeks researching actual execution chambers, consulting with prison officials, studying photographs from Sing Sing. They built the chair to exact specifications, down to the leather straps and metal cap. When it arrived on set, the entire crew fell silent. Even the hardened technicians who'd seen everything were shaken. Robert Reed later said he couldn't film his scenes near the chair without feeling physically ill, but that visceral reaction was exactly what Rose wanted. The episode aired with the chair barely visible in the background, yet its presence dominated every frame. Viewers felt its weight without seeing details, and the episode sparked a national conversation about capital punishment that lasted months. Number 13. The show lost major sponsors every season, but somehow kept finding new ones. In 1962, after The Abortion Story aired, 4 major advertisers pulled their contracts immediately. CBS estimated losses in the millions. The network prepared to fill time slots with generic ads until replacement sponsors could be found. But something unexpected happened. Smaller companies, ones that had never advertised on network television before, reached out. They saw the Defenders as an opportunity to align their brands with intelligence and social consciousness. A struggling car company took a chance. A regional bank signed on. And even a pharmaceutical company, impressed by the show's honest depiction of medical ethics, bought ad time. These weren't the massive corporations CBS preferred, but their combined support kept the show afloat. And as the Defenders built its reputation, bigger sponsors returned, willing to weather occasional controversy for association with prestige television. It proved something crucial about audiences. They remembered which brands supported quality programming, and that loyalty translated to sales in ways traditional advertising metrics couldn't measure. The Defenders became proof that taking risks could build deeper connections than playing it safe. Number 14. E.G. Marshall received death threats after defending unpopular clients on the show. Viewers who couldn't separate actor from character sent letters calling him a traitor, a communist sympathizer, a threat to American values. Some threatened violence against him and his family. CBS hired security to escort Marshall between his home and the studio, The threats intensified after episodes dealing with civil rights, particularly when the Prestons defended black clients facing discrimination. Marshall never spoke publicly about the threats while the show aired, but years later, he admitted they terrified him. Not for himself, but for his children who didn't understand why their father was hated for playing a lawyer on television. Yet, Marshall never asked Rose to soften the scripts or avoid controversial cases. He believed the threats proved the show was necessary, that it was exposing prejudices people preferred to keep hidden. And he wore the hatred as a badge of honor, evidence that the Defenders was doing exactly what it set out to do, make America confront its ugliest impulses. The security detail stayed for 3 seasons. The threats eventually decreased, but never completely stopped. And Marshall kept showing up, kept defending the indefensible, kept proving that every person deserved representation regardless of how despicable their alleged crimes. Number 15. The writers conducted mock trials before filming major episodes. Reginald Rose would gather legal consultants, actors, and writers in a rented courtroom and stage full trials using the scripts. Lawyers would argue both sides, following actual courtroom procedures. A retired judge would preside. Rose wanted to see if the legal arguments held up under scrutiny, if the dialogue sounded authentic when spoken in the right environment, if the emotional beats landed with the same power they had on the page. Sometimes these mock trials revealed fatal flaws in the scripts. Arguments that seemed airtight on paper crumbled under cross-examination. Witnesses who appeared sympathetic came across as evasive when actually questioned. Rose would take notes furiously, then rewrite entire sections based on what he learned. Actors found these sessions invaluable. Robert Reed said performing in the mock trials taught him more about courtroom behavior than any amount of research. He learned the rhythm of legal proceedings, the subtle ways attorneys build arguments, the importance of silence and timing. The mock trials added weeks to production schedules and thousands to budgets, but Rose considered them essential. Television audiences might not be lawyers, but they could sense inauthenticity, and the Defenders' commitment to getting everything right, down to the smallest procedural detail, was what separated it from every other legal show on television. Number 16. One script was so controversial, CBS locked it in a vault for 2 years. The Madman dealt with the defendant claiming insanity as a defense for murder, while exploring how mental illness was treated in the legal system and society. The episode featured unflinching depictions of psychiatric facilities, questioned the competence of court-appointed psychiatrists, and suggested the insanity defense was often misunderstood and misapplied. Network executives read the script and immediately shelved it. They feared backlash from mental health organizations, worried about depicting psychiatric patients in ways that might seem exploitative, and questioned whether primetime audiences were ready for such raw material. Rose fought for the episode, but lost. The script sat in a CBS vault while the show moved forward with safer cases. But Rose didn't give up. Every few months, he'd bring it up in meetings, argue that the episode was exactly the kind of programming the Defenders was meant to produce. Finally, in the show's 4th season, after dozens of controversial episodes had aired without destroying the network, CBS relented. The Madman was filmed with minimal changes to the original script. It aired on a Tuesday night in 1965 and became one of the highest-rated episodes of the entire series. Mental health organizations praised its sensitivity and accuracy. Critics called it groundbreaking television, and Rose had proven once again that underestimating audiences was always a mistake. Number 17. Robert Reed studied law school textbooks between takes, not because he needed to understand legal theory for his performance, but because he became genuinely fascinated by the law while working on the show. He'd sit in his dressing room during breaks, reading case law, studying landmark Supreme Court decisions, absorbing constitutional principles. The crew teased him mercilessly, calling him Professor Preston, and asking for legal advice. But Reed was serious. He later said, "The Defenders changed how he understood citizenship and civic responsibility. Playing Kenneth Preston wasn't just a job. It was an education in how justice worked and failed in America." Reed became friendly with several legal consultants, picking their brains about real cases, asking hypothetical questions, debating interpretations of constitutional law. One consultant joked that Reed could have passed the bar exam after 4 seasons on the show, and that deep knowledge improved his performances. When Kenneth Preston argued a case, Reed understood the law well enough to find emotional truth in technical language. He knew which arguments carried weight, which precedents mattered, which strategies might actually work. That authenticity resonated with viewers, especially lawyers who watched the show with professional skepticism and found themselves impressed by how accurately it portrayed their profession. Number 18. The show filmed its final episode without knowing it was the final episode. CBS had renewed The Defenders for a 5th season, but behind the scenes, financial pressures were mounting. Production costs had increased while advertising revenue remained inconsistent. The network wanted to move toward lighter programming, away from the heavy social drama that defined The Defenders. Midway through filming what they thought would be season 4 with more episodes coming, CBS executives made a sudden decision: cancel the show effective immediately. The cast and crew found out through Variety, not from the network. There was no farewell episode, no chance to give the characters a proper ending, no opportunity to thank viewers for their loyalty. E.G. Marshall was furious. Robert Reed was devastated. Reginald Rose tried to shop the show to other networks, but no one wanted to inherit CBS's expensive problem. The final episode that aired, A Book for Burning, was about censorship and the First Amendment. It was pure coincidence, but the irony wasn't lost on anyone. A show about fighting for unpopular causes was canceled, not because it failed, but because it succeeded too well at being difficult. The Defenders ended not with resolution, but with more questions, which felt strangely appropriate for a series that had spent 4 seasons refusing to provide easy answers. Number 19. The show won 22 Emmy Awards during its 4-season run, more than any legal drama in television history at that time. E.g., Marshall won 3 consecutive Emmys for Outstanding Lead Actor. The writing won 8 Emmys. Even the cinematography and direction won multiple awards. But Reginald Rose never attended the ceremonies. He believed awards were meaningless distractions from the work itself, that celebrating excellence in one episode meant nothing if the next episode failed to maintain standards. CBS publicity begged him to appear, told him his absence seemed ungrateful or arrogant. Rose didn't care. He'd stay home while his show collected statues, already focused on next season's episodes, already planning which controversial subjects to tackle next. E.G. Marshall attended the ceremonies, but refused to give acceptance speeches longer than 1 sentence. He'd walk on stage, say, "Thank you," and walk off. Robert Reed was the opposite, using his Emmy wins to talk about the show's importance, to thank viewers for watching difficult television, to encourage other programs to take similar risks. The different approaches reflected their different personalities, but all 3 men shared one belief. The Defenders wasn't about winning awards. It was about changing conversation, and the real measure of success wasn't gold statues, but the thousands of letters from viewers saying the show made them think differently about justice, prejudice, and their responsibilities as citizens. Number 20. After The Defenders ended, CBS tried multiple times to revive it. In 1997, they produced a TV movie reunion with E.G. Marshall, reprising his role as Lawrence Preston, now a judge, working with a new generation of lawyers. The movie was well received but didn't lead to a new series. In 2010, CBS attempted a complete reboot with new actors and updated stories. It died in development. Every few years, another attempt surfaces. Another network announces plans to bring back The Defenders for modern audiences. None succeed, because The Defenders wasn't just about 2 lawyers and their cases. It was about a specific moment in television history when networks were willing to gamble on difficult programming, when sponsors hadn't yet demanded complete control over content, when censorship was loosening just enough to allow real conversations about real problems. You can't recapture that lightning. The show existed because Reginald Rose refused to compromise, because E.G. Marshall and Robert Reed committed to authenticity over likability, because viewers in the 1960s were hungry for television that treated them like adults capable of wrestling with moral complexity. That combination of circumstances, talent, and timing can't be engineered or replicated. The Defenders remains frozen in its era, a monument to what television achieved when it dared to be more than entertainment. Bonus fact: the show's influence reached far beyond television. Law school applications increased during the years the Defenders aired, with multiple surveys citing the show as inspiration. Young lawyers entering the profession in the 1960s and 70s frequently mentioned it as the reason they chose criminal defense work. Some of the most prominent civil rights attorneys of that generation, the ones who defended controversial clients and challenged unjust laws, grew up watching Lawrence and Kenneth Preston fight for justice every week. The show didn't just entertain, it recruited. It showed a generation of Americans that being a lawyer meant more than making money, that the law could be a tool for social change, that defending unpopular people was the most important work an attorney could do. Reginald Rose received thousands of letters over the years from lawyers thanking him for the Defenders, telling him the show shaped their careers and values. He kept every letter in boxes in his office, never reading them twice, but never throwing them away either, because those letters proved what he'd always believed. Television had power beyond ratings and advertising dollars. It could change minds. It could inspire action. It could make people better. And the Defenders did exactly that, one impossible case at a time.